deny, delay, depose. Luigi Mangino or Mangino, like how do you say that, Ethan?
Mangione?
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 Mangione, 26 years old. It's kind of, speaking of these things for yourself, it's a little bit difficult because our company name is United Medical, and the guy who was killed is United Health, and he's 50 years old. I got only 5 messages and phone calls from friends of mine who are like, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, "Clearly, I'm okay because I'm talking to you." So, but this just happened, and this issue of this young individual killing United Healthcare CEO, and how actually it's being handled. It's extremely interesting, and in so many ways, it's so wrong. Now, there are a group of people who are actually supporting this guy. Now, for many of those who already, many of you already know who he is, what he has done, what his background is, but he's one of the wealthiest family members in Maryland. They own several country clubs, nursing homes, hotels. So he has a superior education from UPenn. He has masters, and it's just like everything that you can look for, he has it. Yet he felt like he needs to get up 6:30 in the morning and then go and kill someone. This someone is not just someone. This someone is he represents part of healthcare, and what I'm actually kind of really shocked by it. No one is looking for the real issue. Everyone is thinking that he killed this guy because of some insurance claim issues. Well, he's worth probably $200 to $300 million. So he doesn't need money, and he doesn't probably have to use his insurance for some of the things that he has to do. Now, if this is the fact that he definitely did this, well, there are still some ifs, and I don't know why, but no one is looking at the other side of maybe the real issue. In my opinion, and it's just an opinion, I think this guy, Luigi, Ethan, are we going with Luigi or Luigi?
Luigi.
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 We can put a little bit soprano accent. Luigi is probably, he had a love affair with this guy. That's just totally my guesstimate. Why I'm saying that? Because there's really no reason for this guy to kill this person. So, because of all these, what I'm looking for to see if like they check their cell phones. Do they actually check the other guy's cell phone? Do they actually go back and look at how many times these individuals, if ever, if they talk? Instead of looking at those, they're just lost in all these different details that's really not helping. Because I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make a case of, hey, this is an insurance system issue. Well, he's not a guy who's jobless, has 2 kids, and dealing with child support. Well, even if he had that, we have Medicaid. Medicaid covers everything. So no one in this country needs to actually go out of their way to kill someone to get their message across. So this is something more than a healthcare issue. Now, I did go through some of his personal stuff that was available online, and I would not be surprised if this comes down to some love affair issue. But I guess we'll see. At the end of the day, for those who are supporting this killer, those people have no morals. like we are a billing company, and I know how difficult to deal with the insurance companies. We know that, but that never means that we need to go out of our way to kill people. That's not going to happen, and that shouldn't be happening. And hopefully, they will figure out what is going on with this whole thing. Now, this actually brings me back to one of our other issues that we have. So I know Ethan is helping me here with the pictures, and I am going to share one of the pictures with him. And this is all these issues, including the school trouble that we have, school shootings that we have. We have another issue right now, and that is Luigi Mangione. And so between Ethan's picture and my picture, I'm kind of like, so now your video is playing and then I have my picture. So this is unnecessarily taking a lot of time from public. Why is maybe because the person who died is a high profile name. The person who killed is a high profile name. Now, I talked about this last week, and when I was covering this, it's one of those things like, you kind of try to have empathy with either party, like what may be happening. Now, I think media is not covering this right again, because when we look at what's happening, by the way, my picture didn't come up. I just did it again. If it doesn't come up, fine. But earlier, you were able to see Turkish Airlines, right?
Yeah, all three
So,
popped up.
okay. Well, again, the issue with this is that we have a 26-year-old who actually comes from a very wealthy family. And then why I'm saying that media is not covering this right is because they're not actually guiding the public properly. What I mean by that is there's something that just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So let's say if I want to get the email of one of the CEOs of one of the healthcare companies, unless I know exactly how their name is spelled and how their name, the official name is, because sometimes they may have like middle initials and other things, and the format may be different. I may not even get, even me, I may not be able to even get that person's email. So the access is pretty problematic. So like if you were to ask me how to get United Healthcare CEO's email, I really don't have any way of knowing what his email is. My point is, if it's so difficult to get this person's email for someone like me, how is someone like Luigi is able to get his full program, knows where he lives, knows where he stays, knows where he goes? So the point that I was trying to make last week was, well, there has to be some other types of relationship between these two. So they, in my opinion, they probably know each other. So if that's not the case, then perhaps I'm wrong. But there is a huge part that's missing. So now, as you kind of look into this a little bit more, what you also see is Brian Thompson, actually, yes, he's married with 2 kids, but they don't live together. They have separate lives. So now, 26-year-old, his sexuality is kind of being questioned by public, and Brian not being with his wife. So the issue comes down to probably some private relationship that they have that things maybe didn't go through right. Because, as I mentioned before, this is not someone who is a person who's struggling with health insurance or with day-to-day expenses or with any of those types of issues. This is a person who comes from a wealth, who has great education, who has everything that he can ask for, and yet he's gonna give that up and just kind of go out of his way to get in trouble, and he's not going to have a good time in prison. He's a good-looking guy, so probably he's going to be someone's bitches for the rest of his life. With the surge that he had, things are going to be even more difficult and more painful for him. So I just want people to kind of understand that this is not just some hero who just went after the evil healthcare insurance executive. This is not the case. Now, if you think about it, if this comes from his pain and other things, his surgeons would be in question, right? Or his hospital maybe didn't handle things properly. But again, that wouldn't explain and that wouldn't excuse any of the things that he did. This is one of the issues that I have a huge problem with. When people say, yeah, he did this, but there's no but. There's no however. There's nothing there. This is a pure evil act of terror from this guy. And someone's life with two kids, fine, the wife doesn't live with him, but the kids, he's the father of those kids. So he bought a house in the same neighborhood. So that means he wanted to be closer to his kids. I talked to some United Healthcare employees because we have meetings with that insurance, and they have nothing but say good things about him too. So there's something again missing, and I think it's going to come out. The other thing is that yesterday, when he was transferred to New York, the way that they are kind of handling this, and I really don't understand. I wish that I could talk to some of the police officers. I invited Kathy Jennings, our Attorney General in Delaware, and she did say that because it's an ongoing case, she cannot make any public comments. But my issue is, why do they try to give a lot of good pictures with him? Like, it's just like, as someone who wants to be the center of attention for just 5 minutes fame, it's almost promoting that type of action. That's what I'm seeing, and that I have a huge problem with that. So that shouldn't be the case. So, like, he's almost being treated like a hero, like in those movies that you see, and that can actually have a lot of impact on the young individuals who may not really have a good understanding of life. And I think media is still responsible for, and also, honestly, even the police department is responsible to make this so kind of glorious. Why do we have to see this much of this? Why don't we see much of the school shooting, but we talk about Luigi all day long? Why do I even have to talk about this now? Is because everyone is talking about it. And also making the healthcare individuals target. So that's a huge problem. All right, so far no coughing, so I'm doing okay. So we can go to our next topic. So there was an article regarding the U.S. healthcare costs. Now, this is again with Luigi's case. Things are being connected in a way that is there a real issue in healthcare? Well, there is definitely an issue in healthcare, but this is not with one isolated group of companies or group of hospitals. It's an overall system issue. Now, what is this issue? This includes us as patients. So I actually was watching some of the videos who are supporting Luigi for what he has done to a healthcare guy. And people who were complaining about the system also were the people who were probably abusing the system. Now, remember, in the United States, if your primary care physician wants you to get an MRI for some issue that you may have, regardless of it's definitely necessary or not, you can still get it. Now, when sometimes it's not being given to the patient, we have a lot of unhappy patients that are saying that I want to have an MRI. And when do they want it? Tomorrow. When do they want it? Today. So they don't want to even wait. So now in Canada, that MRI won't happen. for at least 9 months. In England, it may take 12 to 15 months before it can happen. In most of the other European countries, again, it's similar to 12 to 15 months. What I'm trying to say here is we all are responsible for what the system is. So you cannot take yourself out of the system and blame everyone else, saying that, well, we are way too expensive. Well, we're expensive because of us, people, like people who are demanding. So, yeah, am I saying that I agree with certain, cost and like the expenses, the way that it's set? We covered on this channel so many times. No, we are not. In fact, we were the one who supported HB 350 bill in Delaware, where it actually monitors hospital spendings, hospital costs, and not having no real price cap. Yes, but then when you have a demanding market, then there's not much you can do. Now, one of the things that was said here is the fee-for-service. This is one of the articles that actually had a lot of hits. And fee-for-service it has, of course, some disadvantages, but I think it's necessary because when you go to the capitation system, then the quality is going to be actually kind of jeopardized. So the best way of looking at it is, instead of saying fee-for-service is the problem, it is actually the model where it can be a hybrid model between fee-for-service and the value-based contracts, which United Medical ACO has 9 of them right now, with almost close to 85,000 lives in the state of Delaware. Now, one of the things that this article is making, one of the points is high specialist salaries over primary care. That's from the salary standpoint, that's correct, but those are the individuals who have more education and more expertise. So like the cardiologists, just for a non-invasive cardiologist, they have 3 years more on top of their three years residency. So, and then if they are also going for the interventional cardiology, they have to do another year. So they will have more than the initial base residency in any case. So I think instead of looking into that from that point, looking at it as how these individuals are being employed, because what we have also discussed in this channel for so many times, the issue becomes when the hospitals under the nonprofit label, they can actually offer more for certain specialties and certain physicians as well. And I made this point very clear when we reviewed the Christiana Hospital's tax returns. You can see some individuals who are physicians there, and their salaries are way off the averages. So, and this is a problem that I see, but not as like the salary, but more about who's employing the physicians. That actually is the bigger problem. So administrative overhead, absolutely, that's a big problem in total cost and hidden prices. This usually comes to the hospital work. So because we don't really have a good understanding of the bill that we are getting from the hospital, if you go to your primary care physician, you'll see one CPT code. But when you go to the hospital, things are under the revenue code, and it's not the same. So even I wouldn't understand what they are billing for. And yes, there are a lot of hidden costs. Now, sky-high prescription drug costs. This is important. And just last week, as I actually went through this cold or whatever I'm having these days, one of the things I insist, like it goes back to the customer, the patient who's part of the system demanding something from the system. I had a cold sore and then I want to have Ultrex, but I wanted not the generic, I want to have the brand name. For 14 pills, I paid $400. So my insurance didn't cover, which I was fine with because I want to come back to today's show with no pulse sore. And it does work, but it's $400. When it's generic, it's after my insurance pays, my portion was $2. But I wasn't happy with that. I wanted to have that brand. So that means there's a problem. There's a gap between the generic and the brand. So then when this is if this is part of the system, this needs to be fixed. I mean, for 14 pills, I mean, since Ethan is in the room and he's making faces, this is real. I'm not exaggerating. So it's $384 to be exact. So for 14 pills. And it doesn't cure cancer or Alzheimer or whatever some big complex issue is for cold sore. So, and again, who's the problem? The patient. The patient is me in this case. Who's the problem? It's the system, because the system makes money from this. But this is the way that we are able to fight with these issues is not going out of our way and kill people. That is terrorism. The way we have policies, procedures in place. We have what we are doing right now with this channel. I could easily cancel today's episode saying that I have cough and I don't want to have that in front of everyone. But this is our voice. So when we hit 100,000 subscribers, that voice is going to become bigger, right? So there are ways to actually voice your opinion without killing people. So all these issues should be discussed, and we are actually addressing some of those from our level. But the reality is the prescription is a huge problem. Now, one last issue that is becoming more common is the private equity influence. So big investors, these companies, they buy these specialists usually, and then they are offering them a lot of money. And one of the ways that they can actually get that money out is almost generating a monopoly in the small market, and then with a certain specialty, and then try to kind of twist the insurance companies' arm for higher reimbursements. This actually is happening right now in Delaware. So without mentioning the names, 2 cardiology groups were bought by the same private equity company. So I know one of the groups, and I know the other group a little bit less than the other one. But right now, when those 2 merges, there isn't much in cardiology, especially in Newcastle County, other than the hospital system. So because it never made sense why they would be paying so much money to the practice, knowing there isn't any actual equity in those and assets in those. But then if they're able to use the system and then get higher reimbursements, so the private equity firms can become a huge problem for the overall cost. And also, where do they get this money should be looked into. Like, why do they feel like they can actually put that much money into the practice that's not making that much? Is it a way of money laundering? Is it a way of getting the money into the system, and by doing that you can use the healthcare system and healthcare practice? Possible. I don't know for sure, but it is possible. But this is happening, and this will have this impact of these will be felt probably in the next couple of years. It may not be immediate, but this is something that Attorney General's office should be looking into very closely. So, and this is true also for the hospital systems. When they actually merge, like in Newcastle County, we have Christiana Hospital, and we have very little St. Francis. When that means there is really no competition, none. So whatever Christiana wants, whatever Christiana gets. So when you don't have a market that's open for competition, then we end up paying more for all these. But again, everything can be controlled under the monopoly policies, and it's just like we need to look into these instead of saying that, hey, this is the nonprofit hospital, so great. Well, 2.2 billion and then 1 billion profit in the last 5 fiscal years is real number. So we kind of need to wake up and then understand what I'm saying here. So these are not nonprofit organizations. These are very profitable organizations, and then they are done under the existing law that allows them to do whatever they want to do, and then the media covers them really nicely. So the United Medical is the evil for-profit organization. Christiana is the or Bay Health or BB. It's just not. It's not about one hospital. So they are the nonprofit. They are not nonprofit. Look at Bay Health's entire profit for the last 5 years, close to 400 million. In a small hospital in Delaware, the second smallest state in the United States, in the smallest county, hospital makes tons of profit. Those should be looked into with this private equity issue as well. Welcome to United TV. My name is Kemal Erkan. Today is December 27th, 2024. This is our last episode of 2024. And before we actually start with all these, this week between Christmas, Hanukkah, and New Year coming, hopefully everyone has great time with their holidays, and hopefully 2025 will be a much better year than 2024. So we do pick our topics based on certain issues that's actually surfacing and how it involves us. And then there are some of them we like to cover and there are some we don't. And Luigi Mangione case is one of them that we really don't like to cover. However, because of the hysteria around this issue, we have to kind of follow up with what we have. So I have some personal observations regarding this issue. And, one of the things, and I thought I mentioned this last week, apparently I didn't. So one of the things for me was after watching Menendez brothers, for those who don't know, they are a very wealthy family, 2 kids, they killed their parents. So there's a new TV show on Netflix. So, and I did watch it, I believe, maybe 2 months ago. And the way they portrayed these individuals, there was a point where I felt like, oh, maybe they should free them. So the issue again is how media even can influence a 50-year-old like someone like me, someone who has a lot of education, a lot of experience. Even I can feel like, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't be in jail anymore. But then there was that part where the older brother or the older brother, where he was actually telling everything to this outsider, where she was writing and recording all those. So I think if that piece didn't happen, I don't know if you guys watched this, but if that piece wasn't there, I would almost say that, hey, these guys shouldn't be in jail anymore. So this is how dangerous the way that media influence is. So, and I see a similar pattern in this issue. Psychological impact on a 14, 15, 16-year-old or a 26-year-old. This is something that we see as a problem with these individuals. So therefore, responsibility of media needs to be taken very seriously. And I believe that is what's lacking in this whole issue so far. Now, when we look at this issue from another billion-dollar family, and it's not a joke, it's like they're extremely wealthy. And they have this 26-year-old who is missing since apparently June timeframe, 2024. And the way that it is, what's happening with the family? Where is the family? Where is this really extremely wealthy family where they let this guy who has great education from UPenn, but he lives in a hostel. Like this is a group of people live together. It's not a hotel. It's not even like a hotel room. So you share rooms in these settings. So Well, my family is not billion-dollar family, but I don't remember last time I flew economy. So why is this guy living in this poverty is not making sense? That means there's a bigger story of this. There is a bigger issue of family and his ties with his family. And there's something that's, or perhaps he actually chose to do this. We don't know. But definitely he wasn't happy. What made him to decide to disappear and disconnect with his family? So this is something interesting. The media is not actually covering this. Why is media not telling and researching and doing the journalism that's needed, and then go and find these facts, and then instead of providing us what he wears, and is it like maroon or burgundy, like making that color discussion of his sweater versus like his orange shoes, but not talking about what happened to this person with his family. Why does he live with a group of people? That's not a desirable situation for someone who comes from this level of wealth, this level of education. So I think that's going to probably change a lot of things. And I think maybe because of that desperation, he got closer to this other guy, Brian Thompson, and maybe there was some type of a relationship between the two. Um, Now, of course, I don't know any of these. I'm just guessing because the pieces that we have today is not making any sense. So now, when I am watching uh, these supporters of Luigi Mangione, this is another thing that really bothers me. So in this country, you may be happy or unhappy with anything or everything, but there's a way to process and uh, go after these things legally. So you don't have to commit crime. If everyone is trying to get their way by harming other people, then it will be like the old days. It would be a crazy country to live in, and that's not what we are. We are one of the best democracies and best systems in the world, and because of that, you have choices. You can, especially someone who's this intelligent, could have chosen a better pattern, better. He could make better decisions and do a better job. But today, what we are seeing is a group of people who are supporting him outside of the court. This person, because of him, there are two kids right now. They went through Christmas without their father. Forget the wife because they were not together. But the two kids, they were close enough to him that he bought a house in the same neighborhood. So the two kids don't have their fathers anymore because Luigi has his moments. And we have people who are almost so idiotic that supports this guy. That's, I'm not going to be able to have any sympathy or empathy. That is just sick. So with that, I always try to kind of look into these social issues from different perspectives. Someone who's being Turkey, living my life, half of my life here, first half there. And for someone, I may be a white person. For some Karen, I may be the Middle Eastern guy. And for someone, I may be well educated. For someone, I may be just like another entrepreneur, money hungry entrepreneur. So this could be, or I mean, this is something that we always see. So now I try to put these pictures, I'm taking full responsibility of this bad image that we have here. So Ethan has no fault on this. This is my bad. I try to kind of point out, what if, what if? So I didn't want to use real people, and then I use AI to, generate some of these pictures. What if Luigi was a black man? those people who are supporting him outside of the court, would they still be there? What if he was a Mexican guy? Would we just say that, hey, like these illegal immigrants, they need to go back where they came from? If he was a Middle Eastern guy, would we say, hey, here's the terrorist, I wonder what connections he has? So this is how also important this issue for me is, because we have selective perception on the issue. Hey, this is a good-looking guy, Caucasian, well-educated, and he has burgundy sweater and orange shoes. He looks kind of cool, likable. He can kill people. This is a sick mind. We need people to be smart, responsible, and also have empathy for those who are whose lives being destroyed. So that is one of the things. And right before we started today, I saw the message from Mr. Anugu, my invisible support, and that is, if we can bring up this survey. This is also why we are kind of covering this the way that we have. There was a study, share of adults who say they believe select factors are responsible for Brian Thompson's death. So the 79% says the individual himself, this would be Luigi, and 69% it says coverage denials by health insurance companies. And 67% says health insurance company profits. What about the hospitals? What about McDonald's? The irony is this guy was caught in McDonald's, and McDonald's probably harms public more than insurance companies. So, and 53% says wealth or income inequality in general. So this is why this subject is very important. So this survey is scary in a way that people can just blame. Like we are part of our core business is medical billing, and if it's anything, we would be the one who hate the insurance companies the most, because we deal with those denials. And if we have time today, I'm going to actually share some examples with you guys. But this doesn't mean that I need to kill people. There's a system, there are court. If I have issues, I need to follow the procedure in place. So it's not like everyone is going to go and just, oh, Ethan, you didn't do this, I'm going to shoot you. Too bad, you should have done it yesterday. Like, this is not how we deal with issues. The truth is, if you have a really shitty insurance, most likely either you didn't want to spend the money. And I agree with some of the insurance issues, which, well, I agree with a lot of insurance issues, but this is not in the form of, hey, we need to start killing these CEOs of these companies. So what is next? Like, we are going to kill the president of the United States because we may have issues, which this happened in the past. But if this becomes the common practice, just think about what may happen. So this is where I probably want to leave this issue, and I wish I don't have to come back to this, but what we are going to see is a Cirque du Soleil Luigi episode, and unfortunately, we probably will come back to this topic again and again.